The dog abandoned because he was old and sick. But when he saw his former owner again, he did something that horrified the entire city. Would you abandon What if that friend was the one who stood by you in your darkest moments? The one who wagged their tail every time you came home, even after a hard day? Who cur, 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 who cur. The fine rain seemed determined to wash away the last shreds of dignity from a shaggy heart. He didn't understand why the car had left, or why he was suddenly. The sound of the engine still hung in the damp air as he took his first unsteady steps. The ground was frozen, each raindrop heavy on his tired body. His once strong legs now trembled with weakness and cold. He sat down, staring at the spot where the car had disappeared. Maybe they'd come back. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. He'd been through so much with that man, it couldn't be the end. But it was. There, in that forgotten stretch of road, the old dog stayed motionless, as if he could still catch the fading scent of his owner, as if waiting for as if refusing to believe anyone could abandon someone like him, someone who had given everything. Cars passed in the distance. None stopped. A few people glanced but kept walking. After all, he was just a dog. An old, sick, drenched dog shivering under a bush trying to escape the rain. No one knew the story behind those weary eyes. No one saw the heart breaking inside, still waiting for an explanation, for a return, for. And time is cruel to the forgotten. That night the temperature dropped further. The wind seemed to steal memories. With no home left, he curled up among wet leaves and cold rocks. Yet his eyes never fully closed. He kept watching, waiting, listening for any sound that might mean reunion. Hunger set in, but the silence hurt more. The silence of those left behind without even a goodbye. For days, he didn't wander far. The road was all he knew now. Sometimes he'd walk a little farther, sniffing for a way back, but he always returned. This was the last place he'd seen the one he thought was his best friend. There was no spark left in his eyes, just a quiet mix of hope, loyalty, and a silent faith that persisted despite the pain. Then, one afternoon, the storm broke. Sunlight pierced the clouds as he lay there, weak, bones protruding, trembling more inside than out. And that's when someone appeared. An old man, slow steps. Worn hat, downcast gaze. At first he said nothing, just stood there observing the soaked, shivering creature. The dog's sunken eyes seemed to whisper, "Please, don't." The man knelt, looked deep into the dog's eyes, and, as if recognizing an old friend, pulled a piece of bread from his pocket. He set it down. The dog hesitated, but exhaustion outweighed hunger. Slowly, he crawled forward and ate in silence. No rush, no joy. Just survival. The man stayed. He didn't vanish. That night, the dog slept under a makeshift blanket. For the first time in days, he felt warmth, not just physical, but the warmth of presence. Someone who asked nothing in return. Someone who saw beauty in wrinkles and scars. Someone who also carried time's weight. In that silent exchange between two forgotten souls, something began to change. Want to know what happened next? This old dog story is just beginning. Hearts that never give up deserve to be remembered. Have you ever looked into an old dog's eyes, not a glance but truly seen them? There's a quiet wisdom, a mix of love, stored pain, and a hope that refuses to die, even when everything else has given up. That was his gaze. He wasn't strong, wasn't handsome. Not the kind of dog who turns heads or goes viral. What remained of him was pure essence, and maybe that's what made him extraordinary. His fur was thin and gray, marked by life, not fashion. His paws carried more than weight. They carried scars time couldn't erase. A nicked ear, worn teeth. Shallow breaths, yet none of it dimmed the light still in his eyes. A faint stubborn glow as if saying, I'm still here, whole. Even after everything. No one knew his name. Maybe he'd forgotten it himself. After being called so many things, some kind, some not, what remained was what he truly was, a friend. A companion, a living piece of love that, even rejected, still beat fiercely. He didn't whine or beg, just waited as if every sound might be the one he longed for, a whistle, a familiar voice, the car returning. He hadn't eaten properly in days, but the emptiness in his stomach hurt less than the one in his heart. Hunger was physical. Abandonment was emotional, and that pain lasts far longer. Yet there was nobility in his posture. A dignity only old dogs possess, the ones who have seen the worst but still offer their best, who have been hurt but never learned to hurt, who, even when sick, old, and forgotten, wag their tails at the scent of kindness. He seemed calm, leaning against a wall. But if someone passed with a gentle gesture, a look, a whistle, a scrap of food, he'd lift his head with effort, trying to seem more alive. Not asking. Just grateful, as if saying, I'm still here. And I still believe. It was impossible not to be moved. His movements were slow but unyielding. Every step cost more than his body could give, but he gave. His joints ached, the cold bit deep. Yet he rose every day and walked, sometimes in circles, sometimes just a few steps farther. Maybe to keep hope alive. Maybe to remember the way home. Even in his vulnerability, he didn't inspire pity. He inspired respect. There was a quiet strength in him, a tender resilience. A purity even abandonment couldn't erase. As if he knew someone somewhere would still see him, past the ribs, the matted fur, the sunken eyes, and maybe that's why he never gave up. He wasn't waiting for a miracle. Just a glance, a gesture, a sign, and that's the power of dogs like him. They don't give up on us, even when we give up on them. It's easy to love a puppy full of energy. Harder to cherish an old dog, slow and gray. But when you truly look, you see a depth there, a silent story, an ancient wisdom only earned through suffering. He was that kind of dog, loyal to the end. Sick, yes, but still full of love, a love that asked for nothing. That didn't pressure or demand, it simply was. His eyes weren't the same as in his youth, but they still knew how to smile. And in that silent smile, he found the strength to keep. Those who passed by might not have noticed, but the ones who stopped, who looked with their hearts, understood. Here was a silent hero. A survivor, a teacher of unconditional love. And he knew, deep down, he knew, his story wasn't over. The next chapter could be different. He just had to keep waiting, even if no one else was watching. But someone was coming. Slowly, without fear. And the old dog, weak as he was, looked up. He still believed. And for now, that was enough. Do you want to know who this person was? Wait until you see what happens when two broken hearts finally meet. Because true love has no expiration date. Have you ever noticed how some memories smell? Like coffee, wet earth, old blankets, or cheap food mixed. Some memories don't live in the mind. They live in the chest, in the pause, in the tail that wags with longing. It's funny how, even after so long, certain memories stay quiet, ready to revive at the slightest hint. That's how it was for him. The old dog, now lying under a frail tree's shadow, still remembered. His body struggled. His bones ached. The cold from the night before still pulsed in his joints. But his heart struggled more, unable to understand how everything had changed so suddenly. He didn't know this was abandonment. To him, it might just be a mistake, a misunderstanding, a temporary wait. After all, how could someone who'd lived beside him for so long just leave? His tired but loyal mind clung to memories. He remembered their first meeting. The man's eyes had been tired then, too, but his steps were firm, his gestures eager. There'd been sadness, yes, but also room for love. When the man first held him, small, dirty, rescued from some backyard, something ignited in both of them. They were inseparable from day one. In the early years, he was pure energy, ran through the yard, slept near his owner's chest, barked at strangers like a tiny guardian. He never complained, never demanded. A look was enough. He was always there on sunny days, on rainy mornings. When the man cried in secret, he was there. When he laughed alone, the dog joined. He knew every smell in the house, every corner of the garden. Knew when it was coffee time, when the soap opera played, when his owner sat on the porch and said, "Come here, friend." And he always. The years passed quickly. The man aged. The dog did too, but the love, it only grew. Together they buried losses, celebrated small wins, faced hard nights and quiet Sundays. There were no grand adventures, just the beauty of everyday life. The kind of routine you only miss once it's gone. In that shared silence, they became more than man and dog. They were part of each other, a bond of loneliness and loyalty that healed them both. That's why he didn't understand. Why now? Why after so much? Slowly, memories blended with bitter reality. He recalled the first signs of change. Walks grew fewer, affection scarcer. The man's voice, once soft, now sounded impatient. "Get out of the way. Careful, old dog." He heard it, felt it. But he didn't fight back, just lowered his head and waited. Then came the nights left outside, meals that came late, baths without the old gentleness, looks filled not with warmth but annoyance. Still his heart didn't change. He stayed the same. Still waited for the kindness that would remind him he was still that dog, the one who'd been there through everything, even when no one else was. But then came the day the man woke colder than ever, barely spoke. Just said, "Get in the car." The old dog, happy, thought it was a trip. His tail even wagged, slowly. He didn't know it was their last ride together. The road was long, the silence cut like a knife. When the car stopped, the dog climbed out, confused. The man didn't even look at him properly. Just got back behind the wheel, shut the door and left. No goodbye. No last pat, nothing. One phrase still echoed in the dog's mind, though he didn't understand human words. "He's no use anymore, just a burden." The neighbor had heard it. The man had said it days before. And that became his justification, as if the exhaustion of care outweighed a lifetime of loyalty. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel for more touching animal rescue stories. Check out our other videos to see more amazing